Password Recovery Using PHP. I'm Mark Banks. In this short amount of time that I have, I will only be going over the most important points of this process, assuming that the viewer understands all of the basics. Before we can recover a password, we have to ensure that we have a valid email address to send a recover password email to. We do this by requiring a valid email address as part of the sign-up process. With a valid email address in our user database, we can then give our users the option to reset their password. Step 1. First, we need two tables, the user table and a sign-up table to temporarily hold the user's values. Note the password is already hashed and the password itself is never stored. The minimum fields required in the user table is the ID, a unique username, and a unique email address, and the hash of their chosen password. If you wish, the email address can be the username. I have seen several sites do this. The first thing we need to do is check to make sure that no one else has used the username or email address before. We need to check both the users table for those already subscribed and the sign-up table for any pending subscriptions. We don't want to create a race condition of two people trying to use the same username or email address. We check the email so that if the user has already signed up and forgot, we can email them their username and/or give them a chance to reset their password. Notice that when we check the sign-up table, we check the date as well. This is because we don't want a failed sign-up attempt to lock out our prospective user forever. The select exist part of the query returns a 1 if it finds a record and a null if it does not. When we create our expiration date, we need a date in the future. To do that, we use the makeTime function. I bolded where I added 30 to the I parameter to get a date 30 minutes in the future. Then I pass the future date pattern I just created to the date function. The first parameter is the order of the date elements: complete year, month, day, hours, minutes, and seconds. This is the only format that MySQL will accept in a date-time field. Postgres is more accepting of other formats. We need a validation key so that any random person cannot access our sign-up table by calling the PHP page we use for the verification process and passing it possible values. So we use the expiration date, the username, and the password hash to create this key. It should be sufficiently unpredictable and unique to prevent anything but a brute force attack from succeeding. If you would like it to be even more unpredictable, add a random number to it. Now, simply add everything to your sign-up table. Now you create the email that you will send that verifies that the email address is valid and belongs to the user. While you could just send a URL in the email that they copy and paste into their browser, it is more professional to use an HTML email instead. Because Microsoft Outlook does not recognize divs, your email must be formatted using tables. You can find free or inexpensive templates on the web for this. Somewhere in your email you need to have an A tag with a link to your validation web page. I use a variable here so that I can use my template for both sign-up and password reset. Make sure that you add the username and the key in the link. This data is needed by the validation page. As you can see here, you can even access your local host as the destination. Here's the basic code needed to send an email. You need the email address that you're sending to. The message is all the HTML that makes up the body of the email. And of course, don't forget the subject. Headers hold various bits of information, such as who it is from and what format it's in. Lastly, you put all of this together in the code that sends the email. You cannot send from your local host, so you need to include the @ symbol to suppress an error message while testing. When the user clicks the link, the username and the key is sent to the Validate PHP page. Here the returned values are extracted and the user is searched for in the sign-up table, this time making sure that the current date is less than the expiration date. If everything checks out, We add the user's data to the users table and delete it from the sign-up table. Resetting the password is very similar to validating the email address and requires its own reset table. The subscriber enters an email address into a form. The form handler searches for the email address in the user's table, and if it is found, it creates a key, an expiration date, and places them along with the user's ID number into the reset table. Then it sends out the password reset email. For this email, I've changed the return page to reset PHP, and the user's name is replaced with the user's ID. Just like processing the email validation, the return values are extracted and the user is searched for in the reset table, again making sure that the current date is less than the expiration date. If everything checks out, the user's ID is passed to a page that lets the user enter a new password. Then the new password is hashed and the user table is updated. For a more in-depth look at the recovery-only part of the process, check out this link. I hope this presentation was helpful.